Hi, I'm Melinda Kucsera, and today we're talking to Anna McCluskey on the program Fantasy Lore and More, and we're going to discuss her contemporary fantasy series, The Warrior Mage Librarians. I don't know about you, but I'm dying to know more about this. We've got warriors, we've got mages, and we've got librarians, and I'm dying to know what that's all about. So welcome, Anna. Tell us about these Warrior Mage Librarians.
Hi, I am excited to do so. So I'm here to talk about my brand new series, Warrior Mage Librarians, which is live on Kickstarter right now. It is a 4-book complete series, and I wrote it as a complete series, which was nice when I inevitably had a brilliant idea in the middle of writing book 3 that completely changed a major plot point of the first book. I could actually go back and fix it instead of having to discard it or work around it. So
I'm jealous. I'm very jealous. I'm sorry.
I learned the hard way that I do this. And so that's why I did this way this time around.
I do it too.
Yeah. So it's urban fantasy, contemporary fantasy, whatever you want to call it. It takes place in our world, but with magic and stuff. So it follows 2 mages, and I can get into the magic system a little bit later because it's something readers tell me they love how unique it is. But the characters are 2 mages, Trevor and Sister Margaret, who are actually side characters from another series, which you don't need to read first. But they've just started working for the Vatican in its Warrior Mage Librarian department. And their job is to go around to all of the Vatican's super secret libraries, because they've got them, and defend the libraries and their scholarly staff from such diverse threats as accidentally summoned demons and rogue mages trying to get their hands on forbidden tomes. You know the types. But at the beginning of book 1, which is called Blood Falls, Trevor and Sister Margaret have their entire world just blown wide open. They knew magic was real, and they knew about 2 different kinds of magic wielders, mages like themselves and witches. But now they find out that cryptids are also real and exist alongside of humans in more remote pockets of the world, and that there are lots of different cryptid species, and they have this group called the Cryptid Collective. So the Vatican's mage departments have been invited to join the Cryptid Collective, along with a few other powerful mage groups, and Sister Margaret and Trevor are being set to their summit as the Vatican's representatives. So the series carries through these 2 characters' journeys as mage members of the collective, dealing with cryptids, both friendly and hostile. And it's been a lot of fun to create this world that overlays on top of our own. So...
By cryptids, what is a cryptid? Because I've heard the word, but I don't get a picture in my head. It's just a word. So if you had to paint us a picture of what a cryptid is or give us some examples,
that would be awesome. Sort of traditionally or conventionally, a cryptid is like a reclusive magical creature that locals see everywhere, but nobody else believes them. Think of a chupacabra or something like that. In my world, I'm using the term a little more liberally. So I do have chupacabras and I do have Bigfoots and things like that. But I also have, under that umbrella, I have dragons and unicorns and vampires and werewolves and all the standard kind of paranormal creatures. But I wanted kind of a different term than paranormal or supernatural or anything like that. And cryptid just has a nice sort of simple ring to it. So that's kind of why I went with that.
I see. Well, let's meet them. Let's meet Sister Margaret and Trevor.
Let's
get into that excerpt.
So I'm going to start with chapter 1 of Blood Falls. And it starts with Trevor. Trevor dropped his sword and dove to the ground, rolling in a perfectly executed somersault to avoid the demon's outstretched claws. He danced in place as Sister Margaret distracted the creature by piercing its hide with her twin swords and then pulling them out swiftly. He saw his opening and darted back in, stooping to grab his greatsword with both hands and then using his upward momentum to plunge the weapon into the demon's scaly underbelly, twisting and dodging before using a stitching motion with his left hand against the sword hilt to teleport himself 3 feet away, avoiding any skin-to-scale contact with the beast. The creature spun, reaching blindly for him again, its grotesque mouth gaping open in a bellow as its talons swished through the air, groping through the spot Trevor had just vacated. Glancing at the elderly mage who stood off to the side, Trevor hoped the SME, Scholar Mage Exorcist, was almost ready to send this bastard back to its home dimension. The man's hand glowed, and his face looked super intense. This was Trevor's first exorcism, and he wasn't sure how long it was supposed to take. All he knew was that he had to keep it occupied, and he couldn't let it touch him. Apparently, if a demon touched you, that was how possessions happened, and then it was a whole new can of worms to deal with. "Focus, please," Sister Margaret called out as she aimed a kick at the creature's shin with her heavy combat boot. Trevor turned his attention back to the demon, skipping backward as its tail lashed out toward him. It spun around to face Sister Margaret, and Trevor let out a wordless bellow of his own to confuse it. The demon's eyeless head swiveled as it shifted its weight from foot to foot, its ears extending like satellite dishes as it struggled to figure out where its enemies were. Moving his hands in a complex gesture, Trevor used his mage powers to move a heavy table from where it lay on its side a few feet away to right above the demon's head, dropping it with a crash right on top of the foul creature. Finally, a beam of light shot out from the exorcist's hand straight at the demon, and it disappeared with a pop. Trevor lowered his sword, transferring it to his left hand as he swiped his sweaty face with the short sleeve of his black t-shirt. He had declined to wear armor for this task, opting instead for the agility granted by simple workout gear. "Thank you for your assistance," said the exorcist gravely as he approached the pair. He offered a towel to each of them, which Trevor accepted with a grateful smile. Sister Margaret demurred, instead pulling a small folded black cloth from her leather bandolier. Her eyes turned from sear white to their ordinary dark brown as she shook it out and sat cross-legged on the floor, avoiding a puddle of demon blood, and began cleaning one of her swords, laying the other neatly across her lap. While Trevor's powers lay in healing and the ability to move people and objects around with mystical gestures, Sister Margaret was a seer and could use her powers to see into the near future or see magic and auras overlaid in the physical world. If she had a mirror or scrying stone, she could also see into the distance in the presence. The exorcist was a speller, using words to manipulate the world around him. While Trevor made a point to learn all three magic disciplines, Sister Margaret had chosen to use only her seer powers in order to keep them strong. Most mages used only one discipline, and he assumed the exorcist was the same way. "You're welcome," Trevor wheezed. "Happy to help." So that's all I had for now.
Okay. You said it was going to be short. I didn't think that short.
I'm sorry. I could skip ahead. It just gets into like some exposition a little bit.
Actually,
like, not as fun.
If you don't mind, if there's some more fun, like, because I wasn't ready for it to
Yeah, I can skip ahead. Chapter 2 starts with Sister Margaret.
Okay, can we hear some of, like, because that was really into it. It was just like, whoa. I was like, wait, did I thought I hit something or something? Because you just sort of stopped. It was like, oh my god, did I glitch something?
No, sorry. Yeah, let's go ahead and start chapter 2. Sister Margaret. The beer had been as serviceable and the food as fantastic as promised. After a couple of hours of celebration, Trevor had started a game of cards with the exorcist and a few of the resident and visiting scholars. Sister Margaret pleaded exhaustion and headed back to the stark room she'd been assigned in the dormitory wing of the Bangor Fort Library. She spotted the weapons rack in the corner and strode over to it. She paused and eyed the rack dubiously. It was much smaller than she was used to. This was supposed to be a warrior's room. What kind of warrior mage could get away with a tiny little weapons rack like this? She unbuckled her sword belt, carefully hanging the twin swords that were her main weapons on the end closest to the bed so she'd be able to easily grab them if something happened in the night. Next, she pulled 15 knives and daggers out of various hiding spots in her body, arranging them on the rack, packing them as closely as she could. Then she moved on to the miscellaneous potions, from pepper spray to drugs and poisons to mystical elixirs. Most of these she pulled out of the pockets of her bandolier. There wasn't a good way to store them on the weapons rack, so she stashed them in the top drawer of her dresser. Finally, she divested herself of her projectiles, a set of blow darts, 4 throwing stars, and a handful of smoke bombs. She carefully slipped the throwing stars under her pillow for easy access and then placed the rest on her nightstand. If someone broke into her room, her best bet was always to kill or disable them while they were still at the door rather than give them time to engage in an actual fight. Sister Margaret lifted her bandolier off over her head and folded it neatly on a nearby chair. She unbuckled her arm bracers, then her torso armor, letting her breath out with a whoosh of relief as her ribs expanded fully. She'd been wearing armor pretty much all day, every day, for years, and while she was used to its weight, she still didn't think her body would ever really be comfortable in it. Because her armor was so close-fitting, she'd never bothered with bras, but she imagined that removing her armor gave her the same kind of release most women felt when they took off their bra at the end of the workday. She peeled off her leather pants and pulled on a pair of black leggings in their place, then exchanged her sweat-soaked black undershirt for a clean one. For the final touch, she loosened her long hair from its tight braid, allowing it to flow around her face in a wavy black cloud. Holy fuck, that feels good, she breathed, massaging her sore scalp. Maybe she should just shave her hair all off. That's what a true warrior did. This is how I pay for my vanity, she murmured, and to what end? But as she gazed at herself in the full-length mirror that hung on the wall, she simply couldn't help but feel a spark of joy at the beauty of her thick waist-length hair. I am allowed some small measure of vanity, am I not? I'm only human, she told herself. Besides, it would break mi abuela's heart if I came home with a shaved head. Not that she had much chance to get home these days. She loved her life as a Warrior Mage Librarian, but she knew her family missed her, and she missed them as well. Then again, she knew she was lucky to be given such a prestigious title at such a young age. She was just shy of 30, one of the youngest in this day and age to be promoted to WML. Sister Margaret laid out her travel yoga mat and began to run through her nightly stretching routine, starting with her extremities, seating herself on her knees with her feet flexed underneath her rear, toes tucked against the floor. As she moved through her body, she focused on clearing her mind of vanity, of thoughts of far-off family, of stressors and day-to-day minutiae, clearing her mind of all thoughts, just using the movements and the breath to clear her mind altogether. So that's Sister Margaret.
Oh wow, that was also short. But no, I like her so far. She's a spitfire. She's very fire. I really liked this. I'm gonna have to get a copy of this. I really liked it.
Yay. Yeah, these two characters were just like so much fun to write in previous series that I had to keep their story going. And I had, a lot of readers tell me that they were really excited to see these two characters come back. And so that kind of cemented that impulse.
So now I'm curious, like what role did they play in other series?
So in my Matilda Holiday series, Trevor is the best friend of the main character. And then Sister Margaret comes in a later book and she helps them to, with no spoilers, but helps them with their mission to defeat this secret society that has kidnapped Matilda and their, struggles to bring it down.
So is Matilda also a mage or?
Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Is she part of this Warrior Mage Librarian?
She's not. No, she's the main character of the previous series, and then these two characters kind of break off. Yeah. To have their own adventures.
Okay, and in Matilda's series, what is that about? I'm just curious, since in case people want to go over and check that out as well and see.
Sure.
See them before they broke away.
Yeah. So the Matilda Holiday series follows two sisters. One doesn't know that magic exists, and the other is a mage. And the mage gets kidnapped by this secret society, and her sister kind of is having some life trouble, so she kind of drops everything and goes to find her sister, and it just creates this whole, domino effect of events in which everybody's life is ruined, and the secret society kind of takes over their lives until they can really fight them.
Okay, that sounds cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. That's also urban fantasy.
Yeah.
So the Warrior Mage Librarian series, is it set in one city, or sounds like they're traveling some?
It's not. Yeah, it's set in a variety of cities, and most of the places in the series are actually cryptid cities. So The 4 books are each named after real places in the world that are very remote and dangerous. So we have Blood Falls, which is an actual waterfall in Antarctica. And there's minerals in the cliff face behind the waterfall that make it look like blood. But in my world, there's a dragon city next to the waterfall called Matenla, and they go there. It's the seat of the Cryptid Collective. And so the Trevor and Sister Margaret are sent there as part of their... they're joining the Cryptid Collective, and so they're going to this annual summit in this dragon city. And then the second book is called Gateway to Hell, which is the nickname of this area of Ethiopia. It's like the hottest place on earth, and like scientists study it to see what like conditions might be like on other planets, and it's like very surreal. And so there's a group of cryptids called salashifters that are like salamander, like fire elementals, but they can shift from that form to human and back again, and they can change their size. And they have a city in my universe in the Dalal Valley in the Gateway to Hell. And so that second book is set there. And then book 3 is called Snake Island, which is a real island off the coast of Brazil that is occupied entirely by these, they're called golden lance pit vipers, and they're these like deadly snakes that shoot venom at birds. It's very exciting. But in my world, there's a group of these immortal mushroom shifter cryptids that live there, and they keep the snakes as pets. And so book 3 is set there. And then the final book is set under the Bermuda Triangle in a merfolk city. And it's called Devil's Triangle, which is, of course, another word for the Bermuda Triangle, but it sounds way more dramatic.
It does. I like that. I hadn't heard of Devil's Triangle, but I like that. I think I'm going to be calling the Bermuda Triangle that from now on. It's certainly a catchier name.
It is, yes.
Wow. And all right, so let's talk about that magic system. You mentioned that it's unique. Well, let's hear about it. What's unique? Give us the goods.
So mages fall into one of 3 categories, and your natural discipline of mage powers is based on how you live in time. So like, you know how some people really live in the moment. So those people in this universe are spellers. They use spoken or thought words, so spells, to manipulate the world around them. So they have to be able to see something, like it has to be in their presence for them to be able to put a spell on it, although there are some workarounds for that. But that's what a speller does. So they can like shoot fireballs or like levitate something or someone or things like that. And then a seer kind of lives in the future. So a seer is somebody who plans a lot, who's always looking at what's coming next. And their mage powers, Sister Margaret is a seer. She can, she changes her eyes so they go all white. And then she can see like a few minutes or a few seconds into the future. She can kind of adjust it as she needs. And it comes in handy in a fight, obviously. And then she can also see like further into the future in like visions, but that's a little bit less predictable, that she can't do that like on command. And then she can also use like a mirror or a bowl of water or something like that to see kind of what's happening far away in the present. And then stitchers, which is what Trevor is, use gestures to manipulate the fabric of space and time. So they can kind of like, they can teleport things or people short distances. They can heal because that's kind of returning it to a former state. Things like that. And then there are people called morphers, which Trevor is actually a morpher. He is a natural stitcher, but he can use all three disciplines. And anybody can learn to use all 3 disciplines, but most mages choose not to. Actually, most mages don't know that they can, but even most mages who do know that choose not to because it weakens their natural state. So Trevor, because he can use all 3 disciplines, is a little more flexible, but his stitching is not as strong as if he just used stitching. So Sister Margaret has chosen to just be a seer and just use seeing powers because she wants to make her seeing powers as strong as possible.
That's really cool. I love that there's 3 classifications and then there are workarounds. That's really cool.
Yeah, so
And
one of the workarounds that I use a lot is spelled tattoos. So you
ah,
can get a tattoo that will have a spell imbued in it that can enable you to use that spell. Some of them are passive, some of them are active. Like there's one character in book 2, she has a sword tattooed on her forearm, and she can touch it to things and they will shrink to a specific size. So they use that to get into the Salashifter city because the Salashifter city is very, very small.
oh, they have to shrink down like
Uh-huh.
Allison. That's so
Yeah.
wild.
So they can't, it doesn't work on people. They actually use a potion for that, but they use it to shrink down all of their gear, and they have like a van that shrinks down so they can drive into the city.
And then they can grow it again.
Yeah.
All right, so they use the tattoo to shrink it. How do they grow it again? Does she have like a grow
It's
tattoo?
the same tattoo. Yeah, it'll grow it back to its original size.
And that doesn't harm or change it?
Nope.
That's pretty wild. Now, one thing I did want to spend a few minutes and talk about is, so right now the books are on Kickstarter. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to normally we don't spend a lot of time on here talking about where to get the books, but since this is a special situation. So let's
Sure.
talk a little bit about the Kickstarter, because I saw some, I think there's the tattoos on there.
There are, yeah, as part of the book box tier. So for anybody who isn't familiar with Kickstarter, because there's a lot of kind of like misconceptions about Kickstarter, I think, and a lot of people, view it more as like a GoFundMe thing where it's like somebody's begging for money, and that's not at all how Kickstarter works. So I use Kickstarter to launch all of my books because it's a great way to build community with readers. It's a great way to offer readers things that I wouldn't be able to give them on retailers. Like you were just saying, those tattoos, like I can't include temporary tattoos in a book when I'm selling it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or anything like that. But I can do that on Kickstarter. You can opt to get just the book in ebook or paperback. You can opt to get art prints of the characters. You can opt to get the book boxes, which includes all the paperback books or the ebooks, whichever you prefer, plus those art prints. There's an oracle card. There's the temporary tattoos, there's enamel pins, all kinds of cool book mail swag that you can get if you want it. And then I'm also doing some like kind of bonus scenes in the ebooks as well. So there will be the books actually don't happen one after the other. There's like a little bit of time in between them. So I'm doing some interim scenes, and I'm including those in like the ebook omnibus. So there's a lot of really cool stuff you can get on Kickstarter that you just can't get through a retailer. Plus you can interact directly with me, as you back a Kickstarter, the author or, creator of whatever product you're doing will send you updates on how things are going, both with the book and with the campaign. And you get to know a little bit more of the personality of the author. And I love it too when like readers will email me during the campaign and say how excited they are about it and things like that. Like that's very, very fun for me. So it goes both ways.
That's so cool. Now, if you're listening to this and the Kickstarter has ended, because the Kickstarter is only running for a couple of weeks, right? So why
Yeah.
don't you just give us the dates, and then for anyone who's listening outside of that window, can they still get any of these cool things? Do they just need to purchase these on retail? Like let's speak to those listeners.
Yeah, so once the Kickstarter is done, and it's running through June 29th, once it's done, it's going to be a few months before the books will be released on retailers. And at that point, you'll be able to get them probably in November. You'll be able to get book 1, and then I'll be releasing each book 2 months apart after that. And you'll be able to get them anywhere books are sold. I sell widely, so you can get them on Amazon, Kobo, Barnes and Noble. You can get the paperbacks from any indie bookstore or bookshop.org or any place like that. You can also always get anything I've written on my website, annamccluskey.com. And then all of those extras, most of those are going to go away. You might be able to get them on future Kickstarters that are for books that are set in the same world. Or I do offer some of them on my subscription site on reamstories.com.
And I'll have, she's going to send me all the links. So we'll have all of that in the show notes. So don't worry about trying to write stuff down. But no, that's really awesome. All right. So we did the Kickstarter. We've talked about the magic system. Is there anything else you want to say about Kickstarter or about where to get it afterwards? Or should we go back to the world and the characters?
I'm excited to tell you more about this world because I spent a lot of time building this world and I think it's pretty cool.
Then let's do that because I'm definitely interested in these Warrior Mage Librarians and how did they they work for the Vatican? When did the Vatican get cool with magic? I've got questions.
So in this world, the Vatican has always been cool with magic.
Oh.
It's secret. And that's the thing is, it is a hidden magic world. So most humans don't know that magic is real at all. And so you have mages. Any human can be a mage. All you have to do is find a mentor in your discipline and learn how to do it. But there are also kind of these enclaves of mages. So you have these secret societies. I mentioned one secret society that was bad before, but there are also secret societies that are just neutral. And then there are ones that are actively working to do good in the world. There's one in this series called Paula, or it might be pronounced Pala. I don't know. I took it from an Aldous Huxley book and I've never actually heard it out loud. So I'm realizing now that I should have researched that before saying it on a podcast. But it is more of a utopian society. So they are actively working to influence politics to stop climate change and work for social justice and things like that. And then there's another one called Aurora that has actually risen from an evil secret society that is their focus is again on doing good in the world to kind of counteract their predecessors. And then there's also, I have the Illuminati in there, which I had to do a lot of research on the Illuminati, and it's kind of fascinating. I thought that they had been around for a really long time. They have not. They have only been around since the 18th century, which is so strange to me. But the Illuminati, yeah, the Illuminati in my world is kind of neutral. They're not really good. They're not really bad. They're just kind of out for themselves. But they do play a pretty strong role in a couple of the books. They're especially book 2 and book 4, and one of Sister Margaret's exes from before she was a nun turns out to be an Illuminati, and that's a whole big thing because she's a nun now. So yeah, there's all the secret societies, and then there's lots of lone mages who just kind of do their own thing. And that's probably most mages in this world. But I don't really deal with them as much in this series. They're a little bit more in the previous series.
So in this series, we're only dealing with organized mages.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And then there's the cryptids, which I have a lot of sort of established cryptids that you might recognize. We talked about chupacabras, Bigfoots. There's vampires and werewolves. There are dragons. I've got some kind of bloodthirsty unicorns going on. The merfolk are particularly bloodthirsty. But then I have a lot that I made up. So the Sala shifters that we talked about, they play very heavily in book 2. So they're the little salamanders from medieval alchemy, sort of in my world rose from the myth of the Sala shifters. But I've very much expanded upon their whole situation. And then I have these mushroom-based shifters, which were a lot of fun to make up. So they're called the Kalampa Amaru, and they were created when an Inca priestess who happened to be a witch was very tired, and she was preparing a sacrifice for her snake god made of mushrooms. The sacrifice was made of mushrooms, not the god. And she accidentally turned it into a spell that created these cryptids that are completely immortal unless they can be killed by fire, and that's it. And then they can shift into any form. They can also just change parts of their form. So like they could be human, but then like they need to climb a tree, so they turn their hands into claws. And they live on Snake Island for where book 3 is set. And then
with the cobras or I forgot
the
what the
pit
name of
vipers.
The pit vipers.
Yes. Yep. They have their little murder pets to keep the humans away, and it has been effective until now. So then trying to think what other like cool ones that I made up there are. I think that's pretty much it. But I did have to do a lot of research on the other ones, the ones that are not made up. And then of course I kind of, made like vampires and werewolves kind of my own, as every author who has vampires and werewolves does. So in my world, vampires do not come from humans. They are cryptids. They are born vampires, and they do drink blood, but only from willing victims, and it doesn't kill the victims. I mean, they could kill the victims, but they don't. And I shouldn't call them victims because they're employees. And they're very civilized, the vampires are. Let's see. And then there's the dragons who live in Antarctica, and they breathe ice rather than fire. They manipulate ice as well. Their entire city is made out of like ice that is not necessarily cold because it's magical. And there's technology. The cryptids have technology as well. They have these little cars that are run on magic that are pretty much used everywhere except for the underwater city, because they just swim there.
That makes sense. I mean, why would you do anything else when you have fins, and a flipper?
Yeah. Plus, the cars would just kind of it doesn't work. Technology is not as useful underwater, although they do have like computers and stuff.
You would need like a mini sub.
Yeah. But again, you don't need it because you have fins. Or some of them have tentacles, but most of them have fins.
That's so cool. So let's talk about Sister Margaret and Trevor. So they're going to visit the Cryptid Council in Antarctica. So do they get the invitation in Blood Falls, or did the invitation come because you said they were in a previous book, in a previous series, pardon.
No, they get the invitation in Blood Falls. So after the scenes that I just read, they go back to the Vatican to get their next assignment, and their next assignment is going to the summit of the Cryptid Collective. And then, they get there and they have no idea what to expect. They've been given very little information. And I don't want to give too much away, obviously, but they find out that although the Cryptid Collective as a whole has invited them, there are a lot of cryptids who don't want them there, who don't like humans, and some, in fact, who really just want to wipe humanity from the face of the earth because
we're destroying the planet. So
we're getting a little too big for our britches.
Yeah, if we look at all the things that humanity has done lately, like I don't think we have to search far for a reason why cryptid would want to get rid of us. Yeah. There's so many to choose from.
Yeah. So, but
is this the first time that the Vatican is sending a delegation to the Cryptid Council?
Yes.
Why did they decide this time and not any previous time? Did like something happen to precipitate that?
Yeah, there was a prophecy. So again, I don't want to give too much away.
Oh, but, okay.
But
That's my job. I got to get you to give us the spoilers.
So there's a prophecy that basically says that they need to include humans or shit's gonna hit the fan and it's gonna be super, super bad. And the rest of the books are them trying to prevent shit from hitting the fan and things getting super, super bad. And obviously they're gonna get a little bad because otherwise it wouldn't be very interesting. But you'll have to wait until the end of the fourth book to find out if the shit hits the fan in its entirety and if things get really, really bad.
We don't get to know what the shit hitting the fan and the really, really bad, what that could be. We have to, okay, so that's, you got to read Blood Falls to find out what the prophecy is and what they're trying to prevent.
I will say, anyone who has read my previous books knows that I am not afraid to get messy. And so just because there are 4 books and there are characters you love does not mean that the end of the series will not end badly. I am not necessarily a happily ever after kind of author.
Oh, so this might be the end of Trevor and Sister Margaret, or just the beginning.
Gonna have to read and find out.
Yeah. So what are you now? So you've got the 4 books all written?
Yeah. Well, mostly. Yeah. I'm still kind of dialing in book 4, a little bit of book 3, and then I need to go back and kind of edit. But they will be ready within like the next couple of months. And then I'm hoping to release on retailers in November, but I want to make sure that Kickstarter backers get the books 3 months early. So, if it has to be pushed out, then it has to be pushed out. But they're essentially written. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, is there going to be any other series set in this world? As we've got the Matilda Holiday and we have the Warrior Mage Librarians, so there's 2. Are there any others? Are there future ones?
So technically my other series, my first series, Rhymes with Witch, is also set in the same universe. It deals with witches rather than mages. And in the Warrior Mage Librarian series, there's a lot of debate about whether witches are humans or cryptids, because in order to be a witch, you have to have a witch who's a mother for a witch and be from like a line of witches, and you have to be female as well. But of course, because witches are all female, they, have to intermix with human males. And so then it's like, well, are they actually human? Or so.
I see. You can't have a male witch.
No, there are no warlocks or male witches in the series. Witches are all women. So it's a little bit iffy about whether they're human or cryptid. But so the Rhymes with Witch is more of like a comedy series as well. But it is set in the same universe. I do have witches in the Warrior Mage Librarian series. They are alluded to in the Matilda Holiday series. And then, yes, I am hoping to write more books in this universe going forward as well. I'm sort of tentatively calling it the Cryptid verse at this point. And it will be probably like, I'm thinking a historical book. So it would go back into like the history of the cryptids, maybe to medieval times, but still set in this world. And that's as far as I've gotten.
Okay. No, I was just curious.
Yeah, I do want to expand it.
No, it's a really cool world. I'm happy to hear you're going to expand it. It sounds the magic system alone is just very interesting. My brain is still caught on that.
Thank you.
It's very unique and very cool.
Yeah, I have a lot of readers send me questions and comments about the magic system.
No, it's awesome. Is there anything else that you want to say about the Warrior Mage Librarians? Because I know we can't do too many spoilers because it's only on Kickstarter right now.
Yeah, we could talk a little bit about the characters because they were so much fun to create and to expand. And I really like, they have kind of an odd couple kind of vibe because, you know, we have Trevor, he's a historian. He's kind of a mild-mannered kind of type of person, which I know you don't get from what I just read because he's fighting. But in general, he's very sort of gentle and kind of has kind of a wry sense of humor. And then you have Sister Margaret, who is a throwing herself into a battle kind of person. She curses like a sailor. She carries a ton of weapons wherever she goes. She wears leather pants and leather armor and a leather bandolier. And she's got, you know, her swords with her at all times, whether she's out in public or not. And she likes to pretend that she's like going to a Renaissance fair or something like that when people question her. But and then Trevor, you know, he's more of a thinker. You know, she's a fighter, he's a thinker, but of course she's also highly intelligent. He's also good with the sword. But you know, they have these separate personalities, and they come together and make an excellent team. Since it's Pride Month, I'll also talk about the fact that they're both queer. They are, you know, there's no romance in the series. Obviously, she's a nun. He is also asexual and aromantic. And I did that both because I don't see that a lot in literature, and I have a lot of friends who are, and so I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, maybe they would want to see somebody. So I created initially a side character to give them that rep, and now he's, you know, the main character. But Sister Margaret is a lesbian, you know, even though she's a nun, she's not doing anything about it, obviously. She's still, you know, maintains that. And so, you know, her ex shows up, her ex-girlfriend. And so there's a lot of like awkwardness in there. And then they kind of iron things out and become friends throughout the rest of the series. But I like even though I didn't set out to do that when I created these characters because they were not originally main characters, I like that I have this series of queer characters who are not a queer romance. You know, it's not about their experiences as members of the LGBTQ community. They just are, you know?
Yeah, no, that's really cool, especially to find in like urban fantasy. Like, I'm even more interested now in reading it.
Yes, that means I win.
I didn't know it was a competition. I'm a pretty easy sell, though. I have to admit that. I'm pretty easy when it comes to books.
I will read pretty much anything that is magic, and also actually a lot that isn't. So
I like action-packed books. I'm not a big fan of like if there's some romance in it, like I mean, it's okay because like that is part of life. But I like prefer stories that just like where that happens off camera, off stage, just not inside the story. That, you know.
yeah.
But that's me. That's my personal thing. Like,
no, I get that for sure. I like a good romantic subplot, but I don't seek out romance books, whether they're paranormal or contemporary or historical. I would rather read about other things that people are doing.
Yeah, because like we spend so much of our lives like not engaged in that, you know.
Right. Yeah, there's more to life.
Yeah, that's it. And like there's nothing, and I would say there's nothing wrong with romance. Romance it's very empowering for many women to read. I just want to see women kick butt and swing a sword, you know.
Yeah.
That empowers me.
No, Sister Margaret kicks butt and swings swords and throws ninja stars and stabs with daggers and kicks with combat boots.
Oh, she's my kind of woman. I feel like we're already friends. This was awesome. Is there anything else that you want to say about the characters, or because we met two of them? I don't know if there's any other characters in there that we can talk about that aren't spoilers.
Yeah, I feel like there's some fun side characters. Sister Margaret's ex, Jody, is a lot of fun. I've mentioned her a couple of times. She's kind of similar to Sister Margaret, but without the moral compass. So
is that why they broke up?
A little bit, yeah. there was a little bit of a brush with the darker side of magic that kind of scared Sister Margaret straight and did not do the same for Jody. And then let's see, I've got some. There's Cardinal Newbacher is their boss in the Warrior Mage department, and he's kind of this enigmatic, kind of scary, very mild-mannered in a scary way kind of person, if you know what I mean, where he's just kind of like you get a feel for violence under the surface, but he never really has to go that far because everyone's a little bit scared of him. There's Tay, who is a Sala shifter, and he is kind of their guide in the Dragon City, and then he is the one who kind of calls on them for help in book 2 to go to the Sala shifter city to save them from a situation. And he's kind of a fun character. He's very similar to Trevor in a lot of ways. Very intelligent. He's more of a politician than a fighter, but he was fun to write as well. And then, I did this kind of contest on my Facebook page asking people to share it, and then somebody would get to create a character for the series. And I was kind of expecting somebody to just sort of pick a name and a species and call it a day. And one of my friends actually won, and he's a fellow writer, and he created this one-eyed vampire hunter with this like very colorful backstory. His grandmother was killed by what she thought was a vampire. It's unclear if that was actually the case, but he, declared vampires to be the enemy from then on out and has spent years very ineptly hunting vampires. He carries a two-barreled shotgun with a rosary in one barrel and silver bullets in the other, because he doesn't know that silver bullets will kill a vampire, but he doesn't know that they won't. And so he's covering all his bases there. And he has been a lot of fun. He shows up in book 2 and will come back again in book 4, although I haven't written that scene yet.
Oh, wow. That's quite a backstory. That's wild.
So, and then there's some other mages who are actually from the previous series who show up a couple of times throughout the Warrior Mage Librarian series. There's Sammy, who is a very flamboyant young man who is part of one of the other secret societies, the Utopian one that I don't know how to pronounce. And he's a lot of fun. He just kind of charges through life. He's a speller, so he's very impulsive, very he just charges ahead and gets himself into trouble a lot.
Wow. No, it sounds like quite the cast of characters. So I hope that everyone's going to go and check out either the Kickstarter if you're listening while the Kickstarter's on, which is from now until June 28th, 2023. 29th. June 29th, 2023. And if you missed that, then you should be heading over to Anna's website to find out where else to get it or when to get it if you're in that interim period where the Kickstarter has ended and the books aren't out yet. And this has been fantastic. So we're going to be wrapping up in a few minutes. So any last words, Anna?
I guess I just want to say that so first off, thank you for having me.
Oh, sure. No, thank you for coming. This was fantastic.
Kind of sum up my sort of credo as an author, something that I have been thinking about a lot lately of why do I write and who do I write for? And I came to the conclusion that I'm a weirdo who writes weird characters weird stories for weird people. So if you're a weirdo, you will probably like my books.
I'm a weirdo, and I think I will like them. My TBR is already enormous, and I think I'll be adding 4 more books to it.
You're welcome.
I love fantasy books. I love urban fantasy. I when I find non-romantic urban fantasy, like that is like my absolute favorite thing to read. So I'm very excited because there was a point. I don't know if you read a lot of like I first found urban fantasy through like the trad publishers, and for a while there was tons of it, and then it all started to dry. The series started to end, and the authors who were writing it all started writing like very spicy romance, and I was like, there was just not any more to read.
Yeah. Looking at you, Laurel K. Hamilton. What happened?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. And I didn't know. And I bought that book and I was like, this is not what I signed up for. And then there were other ones that had cover. Like I love the Jane Yellow Rock series. I didn't like the romance parts, but I love Jane Yellow Rock as a character. And then, you know, and then I saw They Need a Blake and I was like, oh, this looks like it might be kind of like that. And it was very much not. There was a lot of action, but there was also just a lot of other things that I wasn't looking for.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy to find out that there is some urban fantasy that coming out that is not going to be romance focused, that will be magic focused, and you know, no, I'm going to run to Kickstarter after this. Well, I've got another interview after this, and then maybe I can go over and do that because I'm very excited about this. So I'm really happy you came. Now my TBR is enormous. It's just grown by 4 books, possibly more if the Matilda Holiday series is like not romance focused.
It's not. It has like a very, very, very small romantic subplot that is like that just kind of goes every once in a while, and then there's no romance really.
Oh, that's fine. I don't mind like the subplot as long as it's not like main screen all of the time.
Yeah.
Which some of the Jane Yellow Rocks books, like the whole thing with what was it, Remy? I think his name was. I was so happy when he left the series and got his own series. I was like, I'm never buying that other series because I hated him. I think that was his name. But it meant that for a while there'd be tension with her and I forgot his name, but
I've read them, but it's a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got like all of them. I'm like, it's, they're very violent books. So
yay.
Yeah. There is some romance with like Jane, like she beheads a lot of vampires.
Yeah.
In the service of other vampires, which I think is wild that other vampires hire her to behead other vampires, never thinking that she might turn and do the same thing to them. I don't know. Something about that I love. Maybe it's the strong woman. I don't know. Anyways, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming, Anna.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and that's going to do it for this episode of Fantasy Lore and More. I am Melinda Kucsera, your indie fantasy author, and we'll be back with another episode soon. So stay tuned and have a good night or a good day from wherever you are.